couple of center lanes. Also, over on the South Loop, westbound Highway 3, working an accident, and the train versus 18-wheeler had been there since 6:30 this morning. 290's inbound service road past Helge, affecting that service road. Main lanes are looking at it as well.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, Louvre Couture, bringing together the world's iconic fashion pieces with masterworks from the MFAH collection. Now on view. Tickets at mfah.org.
Nice day today. Chilly, highs in the upper 50s. Sunshine tonight's low near 40. Low 60s for Tuesday. Sunshine all week. Back into the 70s for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're at 45 up at the Woodlands. 50 here at the University of Houston. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. A service of the University of Houston. 9 o'clock.
Colin Allred's dropping out of next year's U.S. Senate race and running for Congress instead in just the latest move ahead of today's filing deadline and after Supreme Court approval of the new Texas congressional maps. I'm Craig Cohen. Today on Houston Matters, what other scrambling we might see today and what it all means for longtime members of Congress from here in Houston and elsewhere in Texas who have hard decisions to make.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also this hour, why the Houston metro area is one of a handful with more traffic deaths last year than homicides and what, if anything, can be done about it. Plus, we welcome your gardening questions and we recap last night's Texans win over the Chiefs. We'll start with a news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments today in a case that could upend the balance of powers in the federal government. As NPR's Andrea Hsu reports, the Trump administration has asked the High Court to overturn a 90-year precedent.
In 1935, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that Congress could put limits on the president's power to fire heads of some independent agencies. The agency in question was the Federal Trade Commission. Today, the court considers whether those limits are constitutional. The new case started with Trump's removal of FTC Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter in March. She was told her service was inconsistent with the administration's priorities. Slaughter sued, calling her firing illegal, and a lower court agreed with her, citing the 1935 case. The Trump administration says that ruling was flawed and should be overturned. They argue the Constitution puts the president in charge of the entire executive branch, and Congress cannot siphon that power away from him. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
Stocks opened mixed this morning as China's trade surplus grows. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped about 81 points in early trading.
China's exports to the United States have dropped sharply in the face of President Trump's tariffs, but China is still finding plenty of customers elsewhere around the world. The country's overall exports in November were up nearly 6% from a year ago, and China's trade surplus for the year topped $1 trillion for the first time. Paramount is challenging Netflix over its planned purchase of Warner Brothers Discovery. Paramount's going to shareholders with a counteroffer. President Trump said the Netflix acquisition, quote, could be a problem because the combined company's outsized market share. And one of Berkshire Hathaway's top stock pickers is leaving for a job with J.P. Morgan Chase. Todd Combs also ran Berkshire's Geico insurance business. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Demonstrators in New Orleans are continuing to call for an end to federal immigration operations in their area. Videos are surfacing of masked men chasing people down the streets into their homes. Protesters say the enforcement efforts violate people's rights and create fear. Area resident Christine Ravello is working with activists to warn others when ICE operations are nearby. She says they blow whistles.
We're being kidnapped. Okay, they're like hunting us down like we're some type of deer or an animal. We're not. So the story behind the whistle is to let our community know, hey, we're here, don't come out. We have your back.
Despite local Democratic opposition in New Orleans to the effort, Louisiana's Republican governor supports it. A major earthquake has struck the ocean just north of Japan. The U.S. Geological Survey says its magnitude is 7.6. Japanese officials have now issued a tsunami warning. They warn that tsunami waves of nearly 10 feet could wash into central Japan's coast very soon. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation. inspired by the principle that helping those in need is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Harrod. Crews are working a major crash right now involving an 18-wheeler and a train that occurred this morning on the Northwest Freeway eastbound feeder. That's why things are backed up right now if you're driving on Highway 290 eastbound. The incident happened just after 6:30 this morning. It's unclear how the wreck occurred or if any injuries have been reported, according to ABC 13. Part of the cargo trailer and the railroad crossing signal were destroyed, though. 6 p.m. today is the deadline for candidates to file to run in Texas's March 2026 primary elections. Our Andrew Schneider says Democrats are frustrated but hopeful after the Supreme Court ruled the state can use its 2025 redistricting map for the congressional midterms.
Texas Democratic Party Chairman Kendall Scudder accuses Republicans of playing games with the maps to avoid responsibility to the voters. But he says in the aftermath of this year's prolonged fight over redistricting, his party has new energy.
I think that the Democrats are going to have more candidates on the ballot this year than we have ever had. I think it's going to be a really impressive lineup for Democrats, and that spells really bad news for Republicans.
The Republican Party of Texas did not respond to multiple requests for comment. I'm Andrew Schneider, News 88.7.
Former Texas Congressman Colin Allred announced this morning he is dropping out of the race for U.S. Senate. The former Dallas representative said he will instead run for the 33rd Congressional District in North Texas. That Democratic primary race to challenge Republican Senator John Cornyn is now between State Representative James Tallarico and possibly Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who has been an outspoken critic of President Trump. She may announce her candidacy before today's 6 p.m. deadline. Now, Texas Senator John Cornyn says he thinks her entry into the race would actually help Republicans.
I would love to see Jasmine Crockett in the race. I just don't think she's going to play very well in Texas. You know, AOC may play okay in New York, but I don't think an AOC-like candidate will play well statewide.
Again, that filing deadline, 6 p.m. tonight. In sports, the Texans got a big win over the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday, 20-10. The final in that one. The defense, again, great. They intercepted quarterback Patrick Mahomes 3 times. The University of Houston's football team will stay here for their bowl game this year. They will take on LSU at NRG Stadium in the Texas Bowl on December 27th. I'm Matt Harrod, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Good morning. Thanks for joining us here on News 88.7 and also on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Coming up this hour, why traffic deaths are outpacing homicides here. Also, the Texans have climbed back into a wild card spot for the moment anyway in the NFL standings. We discuss that and the final rankings for the college football playoffs. And we welcome your gardening questions. For Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston, you can send those now if you want to talk at houstonmatters.org. First up, the filing deadline for next year's midterms is tonight at 6, and we are seeing some last-minute changes in who's running for what. Even this morning, as we just heard, Colin Allred has decided to drop out of the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. He will instead run for his old seat, the 33rd Congressional District. Meantime, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's expected to announce her Senate bid later today. Some of the last-minute scrambling may have been influenced by the U.S. Supreme Court's decision late last week to uphold the Texas legislature's redrawn congressional maps through at least next year's elections. The new boundaries drawn at President Trump's urging are designed to favor Republicans, overturn several seats, and in particular, as we're seeing play out here in Houston, force some longtime incumbents into difficult choices, run against one another in primaries, retire from Congress, or seek another office. Texas Tribune reporter Gabby Birenbaum joins us now with more. Gabby, good morning.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
The case brought to court has been that lawmakers redrew the maps along racial lines to reduce representation for non-white voters. You can't do that. The state has argued it redrew purely along political lines. Here in the Houston area, is there clear evidence that these new barriers, new borders rather, will in fact reduce representation for Black and Latino voters?
So that was certainly what, the plaintiffs in the case alleged, and that was what the 3-panel federal court, found in El Paso. So, they found that in the Houston area, yes, there were 4 Democratic seats. Now there's going to be 3. And they felt that the districts were drawn. For example, the new 9th seat, which is going to favor Republicans, is almost exactly about 51% Hispanic citizen voter age population. The initial court found that that was sort of intentional, and that there was discrimination there, right, against voters of color. The Supreme Court said, no, this was done on a partisan basis, and while this case makes its way through the courts and gets adjudicated, we will allow the new map to proceed for this cycle. So I think we're not done, right, ruling on the merits of the case, but at least for this cycle, we're moving forward with the 2025 map that was drawn this summer.
What do these new maps mean in particular for the 18th congressional district, which is at the moment still without a representative until a late January runoff to replace the late Sylvester Turner, and even then only for the remainder of his term? What happens after all that?
Yeah, so for a situation in the 18th, right, that's already been enormously confusing, I think for voters, it's only going to get more confusing, unfortunately. So, right, we had an election in early November to replace or to finish out Sylvester Turner's seat, right? And that was done under the old map. We had 2 candidates emerge from that for a runoff, Christian Menefee and Amanda Edwards. Those 2, the runoff will be on January 30th, right? And that's still under the old map because, again, that's to fill out the remainder of a seat that was elected under the old map. However, the winner of that seat will then have to turn around and face a primary under the new map, in which the district is changing a lot, right? About 75% of the voters in that district are coming in from different districts now. And they're going to have to face off against Congressman Al Green, right, who's been in Congress since 2005, has represented Houston for decades. He represented the 9th district. That was redrawn. The vast majority of voters in the 9th district are going to be in the new 18th. And so the voters that elected either Edwards or Menefee, right, is going to be a different coalition of people for the new 18th. And this could then turn into a sort of primary about age, right, because Congressman Green in his 70s, both Edwards and Menefee are younger, under 45.
Aside from redrawn Houston area districts, how do the new map, the new lines favor Republicans statewide?
Yeah, so 5 seats in particular were targeted to be redrawn so that, some of them had already been won by Trump, but also by a House Democrat. Some favored both Kamala Harris and a Democrat. They've all been redrawn so that Trump won each of those 5 seats by at least 10 points, and in some cases more, right? So in South Texas, there are 2 seats that Democrats represent that Trump won. They increased the number of Trump voters in those districts. And then in Dallas, Houston, and Austin, they combined Democratic seats so that in each of those metro areas, there's 1 fewer Democrat-leaning seats. And so the goal is to flip 5 seats for Republicans. Depending on the cycle, it could end up being 3 seats or 4 seats, but most people agree Republicans are going to gain seats, right, from this maneuver.
You noted the 18th district, the new 18th district in next year's elections. Once we're past the runoff, that they could create an environment where it becomes a primary campaign among the Democrats, built in large measure around age because of the likely significant age distinction here between Congressman Green and whichever of Edwards or Menefee ends up winning the runoff. Is that the only district in Texas where we're seeing that phenomenon play out?
So we could have seen it right in Austin, and that sort of played out over the summer where Congressman Doggett, who is also, in his 70s, could have been in a primary right against Congressman Kassar, who's in his 30s. Their districts were combined. They sort of played it out over the summer in a shadow primary, and ultimately Congressman Doggett decided to retire at the end of this term and sort of leave that seat to Congressman Kassar. So that sort of played out in Austin, and ultimately Congressman Doggett made his decision. We've seen Congressman Green make a different decision, right? Part of that is that there is no existing incumbent like a Congressman Kassar in Houston because that seat has been held empty for so long. And so, that's one area where age has played out. But yeah, I think the 18th district is going to be the main district where you see that dynamic that has affected Democrats, I think, really since the summer of 2024, and President Biden ended up dropping out of the presidential race over age-related concerns. I think that dynamic is really going to come to play in the 18th more than anywhere else.
You mentioned South Texas. There are a couple of districts that, they're going to be intriguing races, to say the least. Just pardoned former Congressman Henry Cuellar is running again. Vicente Gonzalez will run in a district that President Trump won handily last year. What do their respective prospects look like?
Yeah, so those are both seats that are going to be difficult to hold for Democrats, but I think also more difficult to flip for Republicans than the notion of just, they're just going to pick up 5 seats, right, would have you believe. Congressman Cuellar in particular he has held on to his Laredo-based seat through cycles that, were bluer, through cycles that were redder. He's warded off primary challengers. He's warded off general election challengers. The district was redrawn. It had been about Trump +7. Now it's going to be Trump +10. So not super different. And what really made matters easier for Congressman Cuellar, right, is President Trump pardoned him. He was facing a federal indictment over bribery accusations. That's now gone, right? Trump pardoned him. And on the same day that that happened, Cuellar did file as a Democrat, ending any speculation, right, that there might have been some sort of deal or he was going to change parties. So for Congressman Cuellar, right, I think that sort of argument just got a lot easier. On the other hand, Congressman Gonzalez, that's a district that runs from Cameron County up to about Corpus Christi. That had been Trump +4, and he held on last cycle. Now it's going to be Trump +10. Most analysts, right, think that that's going to be more difficult to hang on to for Congressman Gonzalez than Cuellar. However, both of these are districts that are heavily Hispanic. And so a lot of this is going to depend on how Hispanic voters sort of shift in the 2026 midterm. We saw a big shift right towards President Trump in 2024 in that community. And I think a lot of people are expecting that they might shift back towards Democrats. It just depends sort of how large that shift is. But that's going to be an uphill battle for Congressman Gonzalez, but certainly winnable. We have
a listener question, wants to know about the calendar and why things are playing out the way they are. Why is there a filing deadline today for the midterm elections well before, in the case of a special runoff election, that even takes place? Why is the calendar playing out the way it is?
Yeah, so Texas has a much earlier sort of election procedural cycle than most states because its primary is so early. So the primary is on March 3rd, right? That's one of the earliest ones in the nation. I think it is the earliest. So that means that candidates sort of have to be in place by today, December 8th, so that all the county clerks and election officials can make sure, right, all the ballot materials, early voting, everything, that all the names are there and do their due diligence there. So that's why this is so much earlier. Obviously, in Houston with the special election, it's getting really complicated because you have that runoff right in the middle between filing deadline and the primary. And that's why, both Christian Menefee and Amanda Edwards have had to file for the primary, even though they don't know which one of them will end up being the representative, because they don't have the luxury, right, of waiting to find out because the deadline was today.
I mentioned Colin Allred's decision this morning to drop out of the U.S. Senate race and run instead for his old seat in the 33rd District. And Jasmine Crockett is expected to make her Senate announcement later today. Could we see any other last-minute decisions before 6 o'clock?
Yeah, I think the biggest domino, right, is what Congresswoman Crockett's going to do. I think we all expect that she's going to announce a bid for Senate. You mentioned, right, Colin Allred. Also in the 33rd, Congresswoman Julie Johnson is running there. So that's going to sort of pit an incumbent against her predecessor, and that'll be an interesting Democratic primary. But I think, yeah, of course, we're always waiting to see, does anybody file at the last minute, unexpected? Does anybody, move districts unexpectedly, any last minute retirements? So I think I would be surprised if there was, zero drama left today.
In redrawing its congressional map, Texas started a sort of redistricting arms race this year. Which other states are still pursuing redistricting now?
Yeah, so the biggest sort of counterbalance to Texas was that California came in, had a ballot measure to see if they could change their map to try to add 5 seats for Democrats, and that was successful. So that might have, neutralized the impact of Texas. We've already seen Missouri and North Carolina each redraw their maps to add 1 seat. Ohio had a court order to redraw maps, and that could add 1 to 2 seats for Republicans. Virginia, which just a Democratic trifecta just came in their election in 2025. They have a 6-5 map to favor Democrats. They're talking about redrawing it to be 9-2 or even 10-1. So that could add, right, 3 to 4 Democratic seats. Indiana, state legislature, the state house passed a map to eliminate all the Democratic seats and go to 9-0. Now that's lingering in the state Senate where nobody knows, right, exactly how they're going to vote on it. There's been a lot of pushback among Republicans in Indiana. Florida, Republican state, is considering redistricting, and they're going to start talking about that in the new year. And then some other states, right, had stayed out of it, like Illinois, but you could see Democratic state, you could see if Indiana moves on it, does Illinois try to balance that out? And I think, every action sort of seems to have an equal and opposite reaction here in redistricting. And so there's still a long time between now and other states' filing deadlines. And we could see more action in other states.
Is it clear which party will ultimately benefit from all of this?
I think what's clear is that when President Trump first pushed Texas to do this, right, the implication was that there was more meat on the bone for Republicans in red-leaning states. And I think because California took on this maneuver to sort of get around their commission, I think we're seeing that that's no sure thing.
Is it possible that even if the demographics suggest the GOP might benefit in the aggregate of all these redrawn maps, that the effort could ultimately backfire against Republicans and the House flip to Democrats anyway?
I think it absolutely could, right? And apologies for my voice. Had a cold over the weekend, but yeah, I think it absolutely could. The president's party almost always loses seats, right, in the cycle. After winning, we would expect Democrats to do better anyway. And with redistricting canceling out in some of these states, I do think that this move could backfire, and I think Republicans are sort of reckoning with that right now.
Hope you feel better, Gabby. Thank you very much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That's Gabby Birenbaum, Washington correspondent for the Texas Tribune. Up next, why Houston is one of a handful of cities where traffic deaths outpace homicides, and what, if anything, can be done about it. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues on News 88.7 and YouTube.
Hi, I'm Lenny Ambrose from St. Arnold Brewing Company, proud supporters of Houston Public Media. Right now, with your $60 donation, you can choose tickets to News and Brews. This member-exclusive event takes place February 17th. Enjoy a pint, connect with fellow NPR fans, and meet the Houston Public Media newsroom in person. Select News and Brews tickets when you donate at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Immigration options in their fields of endeavor. More at fosterglobal.com. U.S. and global immigration services.
Support comes from Discovery Green Conservancy, presenting Carols on the Green with Houston Grand Opera, December 13th at 7 p.m., hosted by Jorge Perotti and open to the public. Details at discoverygreen.com.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is made possible in part by Ellen Benninghoven and Dr. Michael Schaefer, with gifts from listeners like you.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. And here's a troubling, if not ultimately all that surprising statistic. You are more likely to die in Houston in a traffic accident than as a victim of a homicide. I'm not sure whether vehicular homicides land in both categories or not, but Houston is among a handful of U.S. metro areas where car crashes kill more people than violent crime. In 2024, Houston recorded at least 345 traffic deaths. That was a sharp increase from 271 the year before. Peter Eccles is the Policy and Planning Director for the transportation advocacy organization Link Houston. He joins us now. Peter, good morning.
Thanks, Craig. Good to be with you.
As we chat about why Houston's roads are so deadly and what, if anything, can be done about it, we welcome you to our conversation with questions or comments. You can call or text 713-440-8870. You can comment on our YouTube video stream. You can also email us at talk@houstonmatters.org. Would you characterize this dubious stat, having more traffic deaths than homicide deaths, the way I did, troubling but not all that surprising?
I think that that's accurate. It's very troubling. I would call it a crisis that we're seeing on our roads, the epidemic of traffic violence, people being killed and seriously injured just trying to get to work or to school. But it's not terribly surprising, and it's something that advocates have been trying to raise the alarm about for many years now, that especially here in Houston, the rate of death and serious injury from traffic crashes is outpacing other parts of the state and other parts of the country. And it's something that we need to take serious action on.
There are some other major metro areas across the country that have the same phenomenon, though, right?
Yes, that's right.
Who else?
I think that it was L.A., Phoenix, and a few others. I
think San Francisco, too, possibly.
Yeah, potentially. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it clear what Houston and these other cities, what these metro areas might have in common?
So we really need to take a close look at where these crashes and serious injuries are happening. And we're finding in the city's research on crash rates and what parts of town they occur in, that they're disproportionately falling on a certain number of streets, what they call the high injury network. In Houston, 60% of serious deaths and injuries from traffic crashes happen on just 6% of Houston's roadways. And that's where the attention needs to be focused, because whether or not you consider yourself to be a safe driver, the data is showing us that traffic crashes and serious injuries and deaths are happening at a disproportionate rate on those streets, really focused on the design of how those streets are built.
The late former mayor Sylvester Turner, about 5 years ago, said he was committing Houston to what was called Vision Zero. It was setting a goal to eliminate traffic deaths by 2030. Whether you think you can meet that goal, the whole point of that sort of thing is to say, here's what to aim for at the very least. Mayor Whitmire has since de-emphasized that initiative. That said, has the mayor made any specific changes that you think affected public safety and maybe contributing to a stat like this?
So what we've seen a lot out of the Whitmire administration is a sort of singular focus on traffic enforcement as a way to combat the crisis of traffic deaths and serious injuries. And enforcement is absolutely important. We all want our traffic laws to be enforced. We want people to drive at the speed limit and drive conscientiously as they're moving through our city. But a singular focus on enforcement really just means surges of police on certain corridors and certain freeways at certain times of day to try and move the needle in that way. And reporting from the Houston Chronicle has demonstrated that has been particularly effective.
Is that because the idea itself as a singular idea doesn't work, or are they just focusing on the wrong roads?
The trouble is that police cannot be on every road at every time throughout the year. And the issue with our dangerously designed roads here in Houston is a 24/7, 365 day of the year kind of problem. And a better improvement to the design of the street can be in place at all of those times and when police cannot be there.
Is this number, the dramatic spike in traffic deaths last year, is it possible that's just a statistical outlier, that this is not a trend or something that's directly related to any policy changes?
For many years over the past, even under multiple administrations, Houston has experienced a disproportionately high rate of death and serious injury in the high 200s, over 300 people killed every year, over 1,400 people seriously injured. That's an incapacitating injury every year. So I wouldn't necessarily characterize last year's jump as an anomaly. This still is impacting a lot of people. Probably many of your listeners have either themselves been or know somebody who has been involved in a crash or had to bear with the impacts of things like rising auto premiums. We pay some of the highest insurance rates here in Houston because of our dangerous roadways.
So what are some of the factors that are converging to create this?
So speed is absolutely one of the biggest contributing factors. It's just simple physics that kinetic energy that's being expended when two cars, or a car and a person, a car and somebody riding a bicycle or in a wheelchair, combat with each other. And we are driving at a very high rate of speed, not just on our freeways, but on our thoroughfares and in some instances on our neighborhood streets. And there are lots of intersections where this becomes a particular issue. And we really need to be following the data and the proven safety countermeasures that can help us combat these issues to really tackle these design issues head on.
Do you think Houston drivers, just by the nature of getting used to driving in certain areas of town, certain paths that we take, that over time, whether we directly know it or not, can tell when we're on a roadway that, in your view, has been designed poorly?
I think that everybody who's listening to the show can probably think of at least one part of their commute or their trip to school or to church that feels particularly dangerous, where they are paying special attention. And they're probably right about that. There's probably lots of other places that they don't expect are particularly dangerous parts of town to drive. And perhaps if they predominantly get around by driving, they might not understand just how dangerous a particular intersection is for people who are trying to cross on foot or trying to cross to get to the bus stop or something like that.
Can you give some specific examples and what these roadways may have in common that, like that we could point to and say, well, here's the major problem there?
Sure. So one of the biggest contributing issues to speed and the sort of speed that causes deadly crashes on city streets is the width of the lane. Lane widths can vary from about 9 to 14 feet. That's a pretty big spread. And there is research from Johns Hopkins. It was a comprehensive study of multiple different cities. Houston wasn't one of them, but Dallas was. All cities in the United States, that demonstrated that streets that have 10 and 11-foot wide lanes have significantly lower crashes than streets that have lanes that are 12 feet or wider. And we can notice this trend throughout Houston, that those same streets, that's a contributing factor, and why it's so important to be designing our lanes and designing our streets to give people that natural cue to be driving slower.
Well, I was going to say that can seem counterintuitive to some folks, that, you feel, I don't know about you, but the narrower the lanes are, the more I kind of tense up as I drive. And maybe that means I'm paying more attention. On the other hand, I'm not feeling as comfortable about the experience.
The thing about driving safely is that paying attention is incredibly important, and we all need to be on higher alert as we're navigating our streets. That may at times feel a little bit uncomfortable, but the data is demonstrating to us that this is causing people to drive safer.
Are there other things that we could do? Because there are certainly plenty of streets that are varieties of widths. Are there things? And I have to imagine there are some streets that have wide lanes that aren't seemingly as dangerous as others. What other factors are we talking about here?
So other factors are intersection design and whether people are speeding to try and beat the light or get through and not realize that people are trying to make a left turn coming out of a side street. And one very effective way to deal with the intersection, the safety issues at intersections, is roundabouts. With a roundabout, the angle that you're entering the intersection is not perpendicular, but sort of like that acute angle, which in the instance that there is a crash, can diffuse that energy quite a bit more and substantially increase visibility and people's situational awareness as they're entering the intersection. There was a roundabout installed at Irvington and Patton Street in the near north side a few years ago. This was a known dangerous intersection that people brought to the attention of the city. It was experiencing 4, 5, 7 crashes a year in the lead up to its installation. And since that roundabout was installed, it's only had 1 crash. So the impacts of the safety improvements from that particular roundabout are quite clear in the data. Despite that, that's a new kind of traffic design that not everybody is experienced using, and it can feel a little bit uncomfortable and unfamiliar. But I think that it's really important that we're looking at what the data is telling us rather than what we think we like or don't like, because that sort of attitude has not really moved the needle on the traffic safety crisis.
Anne writes and asks, have you considered that it may not be so much road design and instead be due to impaired and reckless driving? That if you're impaired and driving fast, road design might not help.
I think that that's an important point to think about. And I think that a lot of people view this topic through the lens of, well, I'm a good driver myself. And that I'm doing everything that I can. There truly is some bad behavior out there, whether it's in the form of impaired driving, reckless driving, speeding, drag racing, and the like. The problem is when those things happen, the consequences for that bad behavior are significantly worse on a poorly designed street than it is on a street that has safer design. And the whole focus of something like Vision Zero, or what the federal government was calling the safe systems approach, is trying to ensure that the consequences for those mistakes, human error, bad behavior, are a lot lower.
Larry wants to know if traffic deaths are greater at different times of day.
It tends to fluctuate with traffic volume. There also can be more speeding at certain times of day. It can be a little bit uneven in different parts of town, different parts of day.
Stacy writes, people need to learn to use their brakes, learn to move to the right if you're going slowly. I imagine there are probably several things that you could add to that list that would demonstrate better driving habits.
Certainly, there's all sorts of better driving habits that people should really embrace. Learning using your turn signal at all times, even when you don't think that a car is behind you. Making sure that you're looking at all different angles as you're about to make a turn or to change lanes, and especially keeping an eye out for people walking, biking, in wheelchairs, trying to cross the street, and yielding to those pedestrians as you approach a crosswalk.
Have things like technology that are incorporated into newer cars, like lane assist and so forth, are those making a dent in all of this?
I think it's a little bit too early to know about those assistive driving features of whether they are making a substantial impact on things. And so far, the adoption of those features has been pretty uneven. They're common in new cars, especially more expensive cars, but there are a lot of people on the roads who are driving used cars that are 10, 15 years old. What we have noticed is that there is a fair amount of promise in automated vehicles. The studies that have come out of the pilots of those like Waymos and other kinds of vehicles as opposed to human drivers have substantially fewer errors, especially noticing pedestrians and bicycles. But again, that one's pretty early too, and there's still some apprehension about those adoptions.
And some troubling signs of when they do make mistakes, they make some whoppers, like
Yes.
we just discussed on the show on Friday when a Waymo drove right into a police standoff.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, that's right. So there's some promise there, but I'm not sure that tech is ready for prime time.
So it sounds like in a couple of those instances, at least, there's still data we need. Are there other things where we need more information to understand how to inform strategies to make our streets safer?
I think on the benefits of automation, since this is a brand new technology, we definitely want to have more data to figure out what the right applications of that technology are. On other things, like the design of our roadways that for many years are continually causing us the same issues, I think that we have enough data already, and we need to be having honest conversations about how we apply that data to make all of our streets safer and make sure that everybody gets home safely.
Peter Eccles is the Policy and Planning Director for Link Houston. Peter, thank you very much.
Thanks very much for having me.
'Tis the season for poinsettias, holly, ivy, and more. How do you make it all last? We'll dive into that and welcome your questions for Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston next at talk@houstonmatters.org, on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel, or call or text 713-440-8870. And stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
You count on Houston Public Media. That's why you're here right now. Take the next step and become a new member today. Every gift makes a difference. And with a gift of $5 a month or more, you'll receive PBS Passport, a member benefit that lets you stream more of the shows you love anytime. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
From SunnyPro, a Houston-based business advisory firm providing tailored consulting solutions, specializing in technology assessments, cybersecurity, AI strategy, and more. Details at sunnypro.com or follow @SunnyPro LLC.
Support comes from Children's Museum of Houston, presenting Faithful Friends, an exhibit fostering connection, curiosity, understanding, and friendship. Families explore other cultures through the eyes of Houston kids. More at cmhouston.org.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. On the second Monday of every month, we set aside time to field your questions about whatever is or is not growing in your garden for Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston. You can call or text now to 713-440-8870, email talk@houstonmatters.org, or post your question in the chat on our video stream on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Meg, good morning.
Good morning to you.
As we await those questions, let's start by talking a little bit about winter gardening. What are some common do's and don'ts for gardeners during Greater Houston's version of winter?
It's freezing today. It's 54. I know. I thought about it like the video part of this. I'd be like, why is that lady wearing a puffer vest? When
Right.
I was actually just talking to the guys out in the little green room. The one thing you can do, it's when you're going to bring your plants in, really 40 degrees is kind of the time, the go ahead to bring your plants in. If it's colder than 40, for sure. And you can do it really anytime. You do not want to bring in, you have plants that have lived in your house the whole year and they're happy, they got their situation going. Now you're going to bring plants from the outside inside into their environment, and there's bugs all over your plants outside, which is totally fine. That's how they live, and that's actually a good thing. One thing you can do is if you have a small-ish pot, you can take a grocery bag, the plastic grocery bag, tie it around the bottom of the whole container, and then you take a bucket of water and you turn your plant upside down so that you're soaking all the green, so that it will get all the bugs off of it before you bring it in. That's a great way to do it. If your pot's too big to do that, then you can just get a hose and really spray it. You really want to try to get everything off the leaves. Definitely pay attention to the underside of the leaves. You're trying to get everything off and that you can see and that you can't see. So spraying it with a kind of a strong water stream, but I actually like, I don't know why it's somehow gratifying to dunk it upside down. And you can also just, if you don't want to do the whole dunking upside down, you can submerge the entire plant, and that kind of knocks out what's ever going to be living in the soil too. I just think that's kind of harder to do, and it's so wet for so long before you can actually bring it in, because it's just this big sopping root ball and mass of dirt. So I think it's easier to turn it upside down. But that is definitely one thing, because you do not want to bring any travelers into your house to mess with the whole system that you have inside. And someone was asking me, what's a good gift for gardeners? And I thought, you know what, a mister. Not a like a sir, but a plant
Something
mister.
that mists.
Yes,
puts mist, little droplets of water on plants.
Yeah, because you think of like the old conservatory where they have the little brass mister with the big nozzle. Yeah. But that actually helps, because we do have our heat on, and the climate inside is much drier than your plants are used to. In our nice, humid outside. So the heat definitely dries things out. So misting your plants is good, and that would be a nice little Christmas gift. You can get a fancy mister, but I would do that, almost every day. And definitely you want to keep it out of the draft. So it's actually kind of interesting. Your plants, I don't know if it's a hormone or I don't know what it is, but they realize that the days are starting to change, because they're living things. So they have a signal. They're like, oh, okay, it's getting cold, and the days are shorter, it's darker, longer. So they change their whole functioning within themselves. They're like, okay, please don't feed us as much. Please don't give us as much water, because we're finished. They have been very, very, very busy during the growing season, which is like March through September, October. And that's when, if they're going to bloom, things have kind of been set in motion to bloom whenever they bloom. It may be in the fall, the winter, or the spring, but it's already been set in motion during the busy, busy growing season for them. So once it starts to get cold, they kind of shut down, and they would like you to listen to them and modify your behavior based on what their needs are. So that you kind of way cut back on watering and cut back on the food during the winter time. And when you have, ideally, you pick a spot. They were happy living outside, but now you need to bring them inside, which is understandable. But pick a spot, and don't be messing with them, moving them around and every single day. You can definitely rotate them towards the sun so that they don't grow lopsided, but just pick a spot and let them do their, because it's their mellow time.
Let's dive into some questions here. Amy says, my old pecan tree, probably 100 years old, appears to be on its way out. This year, it no longer leafed out on the ends of the large branches, rather shooting out small tufts of leaves along the length of them. Also, one of the 3 large branches that extends out of the trunk is dead. We noted the decline after the 2022 summer drought and a severe city tree trimming that same year. The branch that died is the one that was trimmed. Is there anything to be done, or must we just sadly watch it slow goodbye?
I think it's probably RIP. It's probably run its course, but oh my gosh, those are just so amazing. And they really, pecans, people do not have them really anymore. In the old days, like she's got 100-year-old one, people really did have them and loved them. Now, pecans don't give you a pecan every single year. They run cycles, so it could be every year, every 3 years, and you just get this big, flush of pecans, and then you think, oh, all that mess, because they're a very messy tree, it's worth it because you get pecans. But, they do have their life cycle, and it's a kind of a brittle tree. So if that thing is dead, you not slowly watch it, but you will slowly watch it. But I would cut that thing off because it is dangerous.
You mentioned a mister is a good idea for a gift for a gardener. What about for those of us who receive the gift of, say, a poinsettia or holly?
That would be
or
someone who doesn't know
ivy.
you, who gave you a
Yes,
plant.
who made the horrific mistake of handing a plant to me and thinking that I will somehow keep it alive. What tips would you recommend for making those gifts last longer?
Okay, if you're going to give Craig Cohen a gift,
right,
let it be a Christmas cactus if you're going to do any kind of plant.
Oh, don't even do that. don't.
A picture of a plant.
Okay. Digital picture.
My God.
I could really ruin the real thing. Yeah.
So what the two big ones, well, three, there's poinsettias, amaryllis, and Christmas cactus. They're all tropical plants. So Christmas cactus, people think, oh, cactus, dry. It's a different kind of cactus. It is a cactus, but it's from like the Brazilian rainforest. So again, the mister would come in handy to keep that misted inside. So again, it is leave them alone. If you get something now and it's going to be blooming because it will have come from the nursery, then leave it alone, let it do its thing. Christmas cactus is one you really can, everyone but Craig, can keep it alive for years and years and years. So their growing season is probably March through September, October, and that's when you water them and feed them and do all that. They're working on what's going to be their beautiful gift that they'll give you at Christmas, which is a bloom, and they bloom for maybe like 6 weeks. So those are nice. Those you can keep forever. They do require work in that it can't be below like, or they want, during the time they're blooming, they want like 55 to 60 degrees, which is kind of weird because your house is not going to be 55. I mean, they are fickle, but that's worth a try. Poinsettias, people have the whole thing where they want to do them and do try, and I'm sure people will call in and say, oh, I've done it. Hats off to you, because that is a very tricky thing. You have to do something like, it has to have like 16 or 14 hours of complete darkness versus for when it's sleeping every day, and then it gets its light. So the old thing was you used to put it in your garage because that's where it would be 50 degrees. Put a box over it so it's truly in the dark. That to me is just a lot of work.
Yeah, because then you got constantly, like every day, then you got to get it still sunlight the other times.
Exactly. So you can do a grow light and all this. I find that to be very cumbersome and not worth it. But if that's what you like to do, absolutely, I think that's fascinating. A great place is Brookwood. Have you ever been to that? It's called Brookwood Community, and I think they're brookwoodcommunity.org, and it's out in Brookshire, and they have these amazing greenhouses, and they grow something like, I don't know, 50,000. I have no idea. Poinsettias each year, and that's their big fundraiser. And Brookwood is a community it's a vocational community for adults with disabilities, and this is what they work for all year, and they are amazing. And probably if you're buying a poinsettia from some, probably not Home Depot, I don't know where they would get them, but if it's something kind of local, it probably is already from Brookwood. But that is definitely something kind of fun to take a field trip out there and get your poinsettias.
Briefly, Larry asks if you could provide guidance or a resource on greenhouse design for overwintering potted plants.
No, no, Larry. I don't have a greenhouse because I'm not a minimalist, but I'm not a huge one on upkeep, and I feel like those have a lot of upkeep. I will tell you there is a podcaster called, it's Joe Gardner. I don't know. Joe Lample is his name, but Joe Gardner, and he used to live up in like, I don't know, upstate New York or something, and now he's in Atlanta. But he talks a lot about his greenhouse. So if that would be a good one for you, it's Joe Gardner is the podcast, and you can scroll through the episodes to find out greenhouse.
Or maybe some of the larger garden centers around town, just because they're going to have their own greenhouse, they might have a tip or two.
Yeah. But you still got to figure out, I mean, like where they buy it and what they do. They're off-site. Well, actually, if you go back to Brookwood and have that, you can, I think, have a tour, but they have all their, they would actually have, if you went out there, got your poinsettias, they would answer questions about how the greenhouse works. But for the home gardener, it's a lot of work because we are so we're not trying to keep the cold out as much. We're trying to keep it a perfect environment so the bugs don't come in. So I would imagine you'd almost have to air condition it in the summer because it would be like the inside of your car. I would think it would be 120 degrees with the sun coming on it. So I don't have a lot of experience because that would be just an extra step.
It was a long answer for no, but it's okay. Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston, thank you very much.
Bye.
Still to come, the Texans are back in an NFL playoff spot while UT falls just short in the college football playoffs. We discuss as Houston Matters continues on News 88.7 and YouTube.
Inch by inch, row by row.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Better understand life on our own planet on All Things Considered from NPR News.
It's today at 3 here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider dedicated to supporting the state's businesses through safety-focused policyholder plans and annual programs. More at texasmutual.com/TXM Advantage.
Support comes from the Welcome Group and Welcome Wilson Jr., President and CEO. With over 9 million square feet of manufacturing and industrial facilities in over 130 locations in Texas and the Southeast. More at welcomegroup.com.
The Houston Texans have climbed back into a playoff spot following last night's 2010 victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. Meantime, 3 Texas-based teams are headed to the college football playoffs, but UT is not among them. Let's talk a little football now with Houston Press writer and Believe in Astros podcast co-host Jeff Balke. Hi, Jeff.
Good morning, Craig.
Let's start with the Texans. They made Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes look more than, or I should say less than, ordinary. Picking him off 3 times, sacking him twice. He didn't register a single touchdown reception. Is this Texans defense getting even better week to week?
They are really, I mean, they honestly, by the end of the season, they could be ranking with some of the best defenses of all time. I mean, it's a remarkable group. They're, somebody described them the other day as saying that they're fast, but they're violent, and not in a negative connotation, but they hit hard, they hit clean. The thing that was really interesting to me watching the game last night was how there were times where they kind of befuddled Patrick Mahomes. That's something you never see happen. They were in the secondary. They have such a good secondary that there were moments when you thought he was going to come up with a move. Now, granted, they had 6 drops in the game, which certainly didn't help them. But there were moments in the game where you thought this defense is not just outplaying; it's out scheming the Chiefs and Andy Reid, and that's a
which
really
is a
remarkable thing to say. Yeah.
The offense, meanwhile, which struggled mightily in the first few weeks, seems to have settled in. I mean, a 20-point showing won't light the world on fire, but C.J. Stroud has been making good decisions, converting necessary third downs, avoiding any big mistakes, which has kind of been his MO through his career. How much credit do you give to Stroud and how much to the offensive line in front of him that these last several games seems to have finally settled in?
Well, the offensive line did struggle quite a bit yesterday. I mean, the run game was mediocre. He was pressured a lot. This year, the offensive line, the biggest struggle they've had is with the blitz. When teams come after them with a bunch, it's almost, somebody, I think Lance Zierlein mentioned on Twitter last night, said something about how it just seems like the Texans don't have a play for a blitz. They don't know what to do. But I think C.J. Stroud, after coming out of concussion protocol, he was certainly a little rusty last week. He made some really impressive throws. But the biggest thing, and you brought it up, he did not make mistakes. Like, he did not throw – like last week we saw he threw a bad interception. He threw another one that should have been an interception. This week we didn't really see that. When he was in trouble, he threw the ball at somebody's feet. He threw it away. He did not throw – I mean, he made sure he airmailed a few passes that probably could have been thrown more accurately. But overall, he played it safe, and he helped the team to win the game, and that's the main thing you need to do.
The Texans are remarkably just a game behind the division-leading Jaguars in the AFC West, and I think the most remarkable part of that is the phrase division-leading Jaguars. But there are only 4 games left. I take it the more likely result is that the Texans end up with a wild card spot, but does it matter?
I don't know. At this point, I'm not sure. It is reasonable to assume with the games that they have remaining that the Texans could win out. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, they have really one what we would call difficult game on the schedule, and that's at San Diego against a very good Charger team. Otherwise, they're playing Arizona. They play the Colts again, who lost their quarterback for the season yesterday. This is not a murderer's row to end the season, so there's good reason to believe that the Texans could win out or certainly go 3-1.
And theoretically, the Jags could go 2-2 because they're only facing 2 bad teams, and they're facing, well, again, they face the Colts too.
Yeah, but the Colts are awful. Yeah, the truth is it might have been tougher for them because 2 of their final 4 games were against the Colts, and you think, okay, well, they're going to battle it out. Well, not now. Not without their quarter. Now with Daniel Jones going down with an Achilles. It's just, I think it's going to be, I'm not sure the Texans are going to win the division, but it does feel very much like they're going to be able to make a playoff spot at this point.
To college football now, the playoff teams have been selected. The final 12 include 3 from Texas, the 12-1 Texas Tech Red Raiders, who finished ranked 4th overall. 11-1 Texas A&M finishes 7th. 10-2 SMU is ranked 10th. The 9-3 Texas Longhorns finished just out of the top 12. They will be bowl-bound. They'll play Michigan at the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, New Year's Eve in Orlando. They are not in the playoffs, so is that the right call?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Texas had a huge win against A&M, but they struggled in other ways. Look, there were teams that were ahead of Texas that arguably should have been in, particularly over Alabama. I mean, BYU certainly had an argument. Vanderbilt had an argument. Most certainly Notre Dame had an argument. Of course, they were so mad yesterday that they said, we're not even going to play in a bowl game, which, by the way, who turns down the Pop-Tart Bowl? Like, I would play in that. But the thing is
they should really only play it for like 2 or 3 minutes.
And then just eat the Pop-Tart.
And then just jump up and leave.
Just eat the Pop-Tart. That's the main thing. I do think, though, that Texas was on the outside looking in, rightfully so. They just struggled too much in too many situations this year. Had good wins at the end of the season, but not enough to really justify them getting the postseason. I mean, obviously the biggest loser was Notre Dame, and the biggest question mark is how does Alabama get in again? And there's listen, until we have like what they have in college basketball, which is probably never going to happen, it's going to be impossible to make these decisions. They're going to get it wrong every time.
Like the Longhorns, the UH Cougars finished their season 9-3. They'll play LSU in the Kinder's Texas Bowl right here in Houston, December 27th. Cougs wound up 21st overall in the rankings. UH was undefeated on the road, but only 3-3 at home. Why do some teams have such drastic home road splits like that?
I don't know what the situation is with the Cougs at home. It might be just some of it might be who they were playing, might be the time of year. There's a variety of things. I'm not sure that it's necessarily TDECU Stadium that was the real problem. I will say this. That is a very good Texas Bowl matchup. LSU and Houston, first of all, it should be a good matchup of the 2 teams, number one. But more importantly, there are probably as many LSU fans in Houston as there are any other sports team in Houston. So when you combine that, it should be a full stadium. And that'll be a raucous environment for a bowl game here in Houston. And I think it'll get some national eyeballs as well. That's going to be a fun matchup.
Jeff Balke writes for the Houston Press. He co-hosts the Believe in Astros podcast. Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig.
And that will do it for today's show. The Houston Matters team includes Michael Haggerty, Joshua Zinn, Brenda Valdivia, Micho Jacob, and Laura Walker. Jared Carroll's our technical director. Remember, you can check out Houston Matters anytime. Subscribe to our podcast for the audio. Visit Houston Public Media's YouTube channel for the video. You can comment, like, subscribe, and all that. Or reach out to us at talk@houstonmatters.org. An update on the long-standing nationwide nursing shortage is on tomorrow's show. Also, how area universities are responding to a shortage as well of nursing educators. Also, native Houstonian and film director Alex Stapleton talks with us about her new Netflix docuseries, Sean Combs: The Reckoning. I'm Craig Cohen. Join us tomorrow for those and other Houston Matters.
Your support for Houston Public Media powers the programs you trust and rely